for almost the past 100 years since the Rockefeller report that basically designed medical education in this country, doctors have not learned much about nutrition. And the point is these chronic illnesses, obesity, diabetes, autoimmunity, cancer, these mystery pains, fibromyalgia, these are increasingly being understood as lifestyle diseases, diseases of civilization. And that concept's at the core of the ancestral health approach. You can't fix a dietary disease like diabetes with a drug.
You're just going to cover up symptoms.
It's a disease of insulin intolerance. And what do? They give you more insulin.
Yeah.
So, to try to keep you alive, but it doesn't fix the problem. You can fix the problem by not eating that stuff.
Hello, and welcome to Sound Mind and Body, a podcast where we interview inspiring people about the many different ways to stay healthy, balanced, and well of mind, body, and spirit in today's crazy world with a dash of woo-woo. I'm your host, Sheila Melody, and today we are talking about ancestral health. We've all heard the terms paleo and keto, but what do they really mean? How does it work? And why would you consider following this lifestyle? My guest today is Naomi Norwood. Naomi has been one of our clients at my strength training studio for about 5 years now, and she shared with us her personal journey discovering the ancestral health lifestyle, how it changed her life, and how she ultimately became an expert in this and now serves as the president of the Ancestral Health Society. I am so inspired by her story. So welcome to the podcast, Naomi.
Thank you, Sheila. It's exciting to be here.
We were just talking beforehand, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have so much to say. So why don't we just briefly start with your health journey and how you discovered the whole concept of ancestral health?
Oh my health journey is actually not as dramatic as some. I didn't weigh 300 pounds. I didn't heal from stage 4 cancer. I didn't reverse lifelong autoimmunity, although I have met people who have done each of those things now in this ancestral health world.
Wow.
But in a way, maybe my story is accessible because I fear it's pretty common.
Okay.
I was fairly healthy. I thought I was healthy. And in about 06, 07, as I was in my early 50s, I suddenly developed gut problems out of nowhere, pretty serious gut problems that definitely affected my life.
Yeah.
And, when things just stop working the way they're supposed to, and you're bloated and pain and gas, it was unpleasant. And as it got worse and worse and sort of more and more affecting my life, and I was kind of planning my life around my gut issues,
oh my goodness.
I finally got tested for a whole bunch of things, all the normal suspects, parasites and all that. Everything was negative except for one breath test, which was off the charts positive for what's now referred to as SIBO, because it's distressingly common. Stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Okay.
So yeah, my gut was messed up.
And that's a breath test you take?
Yes, because what they do is give you stuff to drink that's very high in sugars.
Okay.
And if you've got bad bugs, I'm way oversimplifying here, they gobble it up. And they create methane and hydrogen, and depending on what kind of bugs you have and where they are in your digestive system, these things can be read from the results. So, boom, I had SIBO, great. I was all excited. I had a diagnosis,
Right.
It could be fixed because I was an idiot and didn't know anything about its ramifications.
Right.
So I did exactly what the doctors told me to. My internist and gastroenterologist gave me this expensive cocktail of antibiotics, and it worked. And I was back to normal in days, and I was over the moon. I remember calling them from my car phone, on the way to work, and thanking them for giving me my life back. And as I've said to you, if that sounds hyperbolic, I would bet you're not one of the 30 million Americans who has irritable bowel syndrome.
Right.
It's not fun. So anyway, it worked. And fast forward 3 rounds of those, it didn't work for long. It was a temporary fix. It worked for 6 months. Then it came back. Then it worked for 3 months. And then it worked for 6 weeks.
Taking the same antibiotic cocktail.
Same stuff, expensive, powerful antibiotics that only dealt with the symptoms and didn't solve the underlying problem.
So they were kind of mutating and your body was figuring it out, and it was like, okay.
Yeah. It was distressing.
Oh, yes.
And finally, they kind of admitted defeat, which I think is not uncommon with many chronic illnesses today, when the doctors kind of throw up their hands and they sent me home to live with my symptoms.
Oh, my gosh.
And I remember the gastroenterologist telling me I was lucky.
Lucky?
Yeah, because some people with SIBO have, bloody diarrhea all day long. And I didn't, I wasn't in that camp, thank God. So I got sent home to do probiotics and stool softeners and all, over-the-counter things that I dutifully did for years. So fast forward 6-7 years, the wheels are really falling off by now, because this is a disruptive disease that interferes with your body's ability to extract nutrients from your food and so forth. So by 12, I was pretty unhappy woman. I had lots of things going on in my body, but I still I didn't realize they were related. I thought it was just a natural concomitant of aging. My joints hurt. And I would tell people, I remember telling people my mom had arthritis. My grandmother had arthritis. I have arthritis. I destroyed my knees running on pavement all those years. I had this whole thing that I thought I was right. I was completely wrong. But, so my joints hurt. I couldn't open a bottle of Pellegrino.
Oh my gosh.
And they were swollen and ugly. And
that's typical. You hear this all the time. Oh, I'm just getting old and
all
blah,
the
blah,
time.
blah. Yeah.
People accept these things. My hips hurt so much sometimes at night. I remember lying in bed and crying. Ugh. My knees hurt, and we have a bunch of stairs at our house. And I developed this weird rash on my belly that was, I had it for a couple of years. And changed everything that touched my skin, body soaps and laundry detergent and all this stuff, trying to no avail, of course, because it's coming from inside. It's an inflammatory process. Anyway, I didn't know any of that. So all sorts of things were going on, and I was so miserable that I woke up with a headache every morning. Things were not right.
Oh, my gosh.
Other symptoms, too, but it starts to sound like a pity party. Anyway.
But it was real. That's what you were living with, and a lot of people live with it.
It was very real. And it interfered with my sleep. And, and menopause probably played a role in some of this too, but I don't blame it entirely, because everything went away like a switch getting flipped. So it wasn't completely hormonal.
Right.
But if you don't sleep well, then you're cranky and less resilient. And, so all that was not
a domino effect.
Yeah. But all too common.
Yes.
Not normal, but common. These things are common, because when I talk to people, you'd be amazed how many people have gut problems, have sleep problems, are taking a ton of medication, especially at my age.
Yeah.
I'm 65 now. But anyway, so I'm still in my late 50s, and I remember deciding that I'd had enough.
Yeah.
I'm interested now in how people make change. This happened kind of all on my own. I just had enough. And I decided to take matters into my own hands and figure this out.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I have no idea why I had that confidence that I could do this. And so one of my big takeaways here is have confidence that you can take control of your health.
I like it.
And that you deserve to be healthy. It's our birthright. We can figure these things out. I'm talking about chronic diseases now.
Yeah.
So I wasn't much of an internet person at the time. I was of an age. I read books, but I got online and I started researching SIBO, and I found all these people. There are all these online fora of people comparing notes and sharing things they'd done to heal themselves. I was just fascinated. I kept pulling on strings, and pretty early on in this process, I was fortunate enough to find Mark Sisson's website called Mark's Daily Apple. Okay. We can bookmark this and come back, but what he's all about primal, and there are slight distinctions between paleo and primal, and we can talk about nomenclature if you'd like. Right. But I fell into that world of Sisson's website, and I signed up, and he sent stuff every day, the definitive guide to grains. This was my whole entree to the world of optimizing health through evolutionary biology. Okay. Like understanding what kind of animal we are, how we evolved, what our bodies need, what our bodies expect genetically, to see from their environment, and what they need to avoid, and how this is all related to this kind of plague of devastating chronic diseases that are making us the fattest, sickest place on earth and in the history of humans.
True. It's like so many autoimmune diseases and so many
all of this
chronic diseases.
All related. So I was so fascinated. I educated myself all that January, and then made massive changes on February 1, 2013. Everything got better.
Really?
Everything got better so quickly. I was absolutely astonished.
You're kidding.
And things got better that I didn't even think would get better. My supposed arthritis was gone. I mean, I bound up my steps now like a little billy goat, and nothing hurts. And I don't have headaches anymore. And I breathe through my nose. I didn't even know I didn't do that. It was so astonishing to breathe through my nose. I must not have done that for decades. And most importantly, my gut problems were gone. Now, it did take a while to heal my gut, because I now know I had intestinal permeability and I had stuff going on that had taken years to get there. And you don't heal completely overnight. So I am a master of dealing with SIBO from my own, bone broth and glutamate. I did a lot of things. But most of the most disturbing symptoms were really gone in 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And the rash that everybody had scratched their heads over, and my dermatologist had biopsied, and my internist had no idea, that just went away one night. My husband said, "Naomi, look at your skin." One morning, and I looked in the mirror, it was gone.
Oh
just
my gosh.
Gone, Sheila, it was gone overnight. This thing that had driven me crazy. So it was an inflammatory process. And when my immune system stopped being freaked out because I had stopped putting a bunch of stuff in that it saw as other and foreign and and dangerous, everything calmed down, and I got my health back. I was so amazed. I was raised by scientists. I did not expect this. I relied on experts. And my doctors hadn't told me anything about this. And so I was just blown away.
And
how
so
powerful
is that basically, when you're talking about what our human biomes have evolved as, that is the ancestral approach to health, is like going with, okay, let's take a look at our genetics and how we've evolved and what has been supporting us for, millions of years. And that's what this ancestral approach to health is based on. Yes, you've encapsulated it well. Okay. I mean, in layman's terms,
sure. It's understanding and optimizing human health by looking at how we evolved. But it's very much a scholarly, science-based, evidence-based approach. This is not some goofy fad thing, even though portions of it get distorted.
Right.
But and so you hear people say all kinds of things like, oh, bread's a staff of life. People have been eating bread forever. Well, not forever. I mean, it's really important to understand that the genus Homo has been on this earth for about 2.5 million years. Even if you look at Homo sapiens, it's a couple 100,000 years. Mm-hmm. So the period of time post-agriculture,
right?
We were in small hunter-gatherer bands, and until we settled down and started growing things.
Right.
Again, very much a fast
that's
forward.
That's when the bread came in.
That's when we started eating grains and grasses and seeds, basically, of grasses. And that's a very small, people quibble about whether that was 10,000 years or 12,000 years. And we found these grinding stones at this site, may have been 30,000 years. It's still less than 1%.
Right. Of what our, evolutionary process has been.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the key is maybe we are not yet genetically adapted to some of these post-agricultural foods.
Right.
And of course, we're different. Some of us are more sensitive to them than others.
Yeah.
But many of us are sensitive, and it can take years to do the damage that finally catches up with you. So some people say, well, I've never had gut problems. Well, neither had I.
Yeah, right.
I don't have any problem with bread. Well, there are people who are having devastating neurological damage from post-agricultural foods and have no clue.
They don't even know.
Don't have gut problems. So I consider myself lucky.
Yeah.
And my current physician has acknowledged that I was on the autoimmune disease process.
Wow.
It's a process.
You were on your way.
I was on my way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a very quick break. And then when we come back, I want to talk about some of the nomenclature like paleo, keto, macros, micros, what do we eat on this kind of a diet?
Great.
As you all know, I'm a big advocate of finding your woo-woo, which I consider to be that magical, intangible energy that makes you feel strong and inspired to live your best life. But there is one very tangible way that I have found makes me feel strong and inspired, and that's strength training. And specifically, the slow motion, high intensity strength training method that I have been practicing for almost 15 years. And yes, this is a plug for my strength training studio, which we recently rebranded to be The Strength Code. I was introduced to this method about 15 years ago by an ex-boyfriend. Turns out ex-boyfriends are good for something. It's the only method that I have been able to sustain over the years, and I plan to continue doing this for as long as I can because this system works. It's not some crazy boot camp that will render your arms useless and you can't walk downstairs without wincing. Our unique method is straightforward, safe, very effective, and backed by science. Our secret? Lift weights very slowly in perfect form. With this method, most people only need one workout per week to stimulate their muscles to get stronger. And it's in a cool private studio with no sweaty people trying to hit on you, no waiting for the exercise machines. More muscle means toning. More muscle makes all those other things you want to do easier and safer. More muscle means raising your metabolism. It means more energy. Simply put, taking care of our muscle is the most important thing you can do for your body, especially if you're over 30. At the Strength Code, we believe that your workout should be as unique as your body. We customize your workout to be perfect for you. And we have a great intro offer for only $49, which includes a consultation and 2 workouts. The perfect way to experience this amazing method and see if it's right for you. Just go to our website, thestrengthcode.com, and purchase the intro offer, request an appointment, and you're good to go. We have 5 trainers, and all of them are great. And John, Joe, Wendy, and me, of course. Plus, if you say you heard it here on Sound, Mind, and Body, I will give you an extra session. So what are you waiting for? Your muscles need you. Getting stronger in your body will boost your mind and your spirit, making you an unstoppable creator. thestrengthcode.com. See you there.
Hey friends, this is Tim Edwards, producer of Sound, Mind, and Body. I'd like to invite you to check out one of the other popular podcasts we produce here with the Inbound Podcasting Network that I think you'll find very informative. It's the Vibrant Living Wellness Center podcast with functional medicine clinical nutritionist Heidi Hoffman. Vibrant Living Wellness Center is located right here in Southern California, and they provide a wide range of health and wellness services, including nutrition coaching and meal planning, Reiki energy healing, and my favorite, the seasonal 28-day detox cleanse. Why is it my favorite? Because it works. I participated in the detox cleanse back in January, and I lost a total of 9 pounds in just 28 days. But most importantly, it kickstarted me into developing healthier eating habits. And since then, I've lost a total of 16 pounds and am now only about 7 pounds away from my target weight. So guess what? I'm doing it again, starting at the end of this month. And they offer these seasonal cleanses in the spring, fall, and after the new year. I'll include links in the show notes that'll provide you with much more information than I have time to tell you about right now. So join me on this journey to feeling great, enjoying better sleep, and getting our bodies summer ready with the seasonal 28-day detox cleanse with Vibrant Living Wellness Center.
Okay, we are back and talking to Naomi Norwood, who is the president of the Ancestral Health Society. And before the break, she explained, what her experience was, understanding what ancestral health is. And so what the listeners may know it as is paleo or keto, or, I'm watching my macros and I'm watching my, blah, blah, blah. And there's all these apps and there's different programs. And so can you give us a little overview of what that is? What is the ancestral health approach? What is paleo, primal, keto? Are they the same?
Okay. The ancestral health approach is actually defined pretty well on our website. So I'll put a little pitch in there to take a look at the website for the Ancestral Health Society. We can come back to that. But they do a pretty good job in the About and Manifestos section describing the overall theoretical framework. Paleo, let me try to do this quickly. Paleo, of course, refers to Paleolithic.
Right.
And some of the early devotees include people like Lauren Cordain, Art Devaney. There were folks a number of decades ago now who realized that we might be getting ourselves in trouble by foods we were eating that we weren't evolved to handle well, and other lifestyle choices we were making that were causing us to become untethered from the ideal, from how we evolved, from what our bodies expect to see from the environment. So whether that's, inadequate sleep, not moving enough, terrible stress causing lots of cortisol and adrenal problems, and which we now know can have a devastating effect on health.
Yes.
So all these things, these folks were interested and wrote early on about living in ways that are more closely aligned with what's optimal for this animal that we are.
Right.
Okay, so those were that's paleo. And so far as food's concerned, which is what people tend to know about, the paleo devotees it's what you'd expect. They're focused on pre-agricultural foods. So no grains, no legumes, no added sugars.
No dairy.
No dairy.
No dairy at all?
Well, Now we'll start talking about how people have altered it over time. But the original paleo, we weren't. What mammal drinks the milk of another mammal? I mean, we didn't. Now, some of us have. There'll be a naysayer saying, wait, but some of us have genetically adapted to milk. And that's true. You see those genetic changes for lactose tolerance in more northern European peoples who probably were exposed to other mammals' milk as a way of surviving various ice age periods. And so there's less lactose intolerance in
different regions.
Right. But I've also heard scientists say that particular genetic adaptation is actually an outlier. We don't have many of those.
Oh.
So that's an unusual one. But by and large, we're not adapted to post-agricultural foods. And as I said earlier, some of us can handle them better than others. But so that was paleo. Oh boy, way oversimplified, but
yes.
Okay. Keto. Ketogenic diet refers to a diet that was, it's sort of silly to say a diet that was discovered 100 years ago. No, it was a diet that humans existed in for millennia. But in modern time, scientists and physicians at Johns Hopkins discerned early on that intractable childhood epilepsy responded to a ketogenic diet. So what does ketogenic refer to? It refers to a very low carbohydrate, moderate protein, and high healthy fat breakdown.
Which is like
diet.
The opposite of what we all think, lots of protein, low fat, that's when a lot of problems started, right?
Exactly. So, and I wish we had time to talk about that more, the devastating effect on global health that the American
the low fat.
Right. But for now, so ketogenic refers to a diet that causes the body to burn ketones rather than glucose. Again, a vast oversimplification.
Right.
Carbohydrates turn to glucose in the body, and the body will preferentially burn glucose if it's there.
Right.
If you take the carbs very, very low so that there isn't a lot of glucose to burn, then the body will burn fat. And fat is actually our preferred fuel.
Okay.
Think about what we store. You can store maybe 2,000 calories worth of glucose in its storage form, glycogen in the liver and muscles. But
then it starts going to the other fat stores, right? If those are full, they're like, okay, where are we going to put this?
Correct. And excess carbohydrates get stored as body fat. But I was addressing just the issue of what we burn. If that glucose isn't there, then we burn fat.
Right.
And the liver can take fatty acids, turn them into ketones, and ketones are a wonderful fuel.
Right.
So the keto diet is a diet that puts you into nutritional ketosis. In other words, you have so little glucose that you're burning ketones instead.
Right.
It has a whole host of therapeutic benefits for all kinds of disorders. And as I was saying to you guys earlier, when you're at a conference, for example, listening to the most cutting edge science on the benefits of ketogenic dietary approaches for all sorts of things, from Alzheimer's to epilepsy to putting type 2 diabetes into remission to supporting cancer treatment.
Wow.
You can think to yourself, well, this sounds like snake oil. How can this work for all these things? But there's a very simple answer, because it's our default human metabolism. Look at how we store things. You got like 40,000 calories on your body in body fat. Even in a slender, fit body like yours, I might have more.
You're slender and fit.
But, the gluteofemoral adipose tissue that is actually a sign of metabolic health. We store excess energy for a cold, long winter,
right,
as body fat. It's the strongest evidence that that's how we're designed to function.
That's how we're designed.
Right. We were not designed to be ingesting carbs all day long with the rise in glucose that comes from that, which then forces the pancreas to churn out the insulin, to get the glucose out of the bloodstream because it's toxic for us. You know how much glucose is in your body when you wake up in the morning? A teaspoon.
Wow.
A teaspoon. As soon as you have one piece of wheat toast, you have 5-fold increased the glucose in your bloodstream.
Wow.
It's a poison.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So it creates.
So tell us, I'm very curious just to bring it down to an example. What do you and because you and your husband, okay, so since you've been on this, you lost how much weight? You look great. You're like the same weight you were when you were in high school, basically. You and your husband both, right?
Yes. My poor husband kind of got dragged along, because I'm the cook. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing now. So he lost 45 pounds in about 4 months.
Wow.
And he's 6'2", or was, we shrink as we age, so God knows. But he had gotten up to 210, which he carried pretty well. Although I look at pictures now, it's like, oh my God, look at you. He had the watermelon middle-aged man's belly.
Uh-huh.
And kind of the jawline was disappearing, all that stuff. Well, it just goes away.
Yeah.
It just goes away.
Wow.
And that wasn't why we were doing it. I lost about 15 pounds because when I was sick, it had just sort of climbed and climbed.
Yeah.
So that just all goes away. But.
And then you're feeling better and all. So what's a typical day of meals for you guys?
Okay. And
give us an example.
Our diet has changed, by the way, because I keep reading and educating myself. So it's evolved over time.
Okay.
Initially, what I did was a pretty massive elimination diet.
Yeah.
And I just got rid of anything that could be causing me trouble and then gradually reintroduce things one by one. There's a very careful way to do that. People like Chris Kresser write about that. So I did that and discovered, for example, that I seem to be okay with some dairy. I mean, I don't have problems with cheese.
Like what kinds of dairy? Little bits of cheese or a little bit of, half and half and coffee or something like that. Do you drink coffee?
We do. So that's how our day starts. So, I wanted to say that the way we do it is working for us now. It may get changed up again. It doesn't mean this is what's optimal for everybody.
You're constantly learning.
Right. One of my big takeaways to people is experiment.
Right.
Because you won't know until you do it.
Right.
Experiment and see how you feel. We get up in the morning, we do drink coffee.
Yeah.
And we put fat in our coffee. Because it's delicious and because it enables us not to be hungry. And we also
have energy.
And we do what's called intermittent fasting.
Right.
And so it enables us not to eat. We're not really hungry till midday.
Great.
So, and fat does not raise your serum glucose one bit.
Okay.
So we eat we eat 2 meals a day. And it's not because we're depriving ourselves.
No.
It's just
that's when you're hungry.
That's what works.
Yeah.
So we eat when we're hungry, and within the universe of things we eat whatever we want and as much as we want. So this doesn't feel like deprivation.
Can you be a vegan and be on this type of a diet?
You can, but it's harder.
It is.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Well, first of all, it's harder to be healthy. And I know there are people who will disagree with me, but I've looked into this a lot. I was a vegetarian for most of 20 years and a vegan for some. So I think in the interest of time, all I would say is if you are eating that way for your health, you owe it to yourself to look into this. Read something like Lear Keith's The Vegetarian Myth. Read Kate Shanahan's Deep Nutrition, understand what you're not getting by not eating animal products. I mean, I have a lot of sympathy for people who do that because of their concern about animal cruelty, about the environment, but you owe it to yourself to educate yourself.
The industrial way is horrible.
No question about that.
All that stuff is the way to go if you're...
Absolutely. Absolutely. For so many reasons. And it affects the health profile of the meat itself. So we eat midday. We eat mostly clean, properly raised animals and properly grown mostly above ground vegetables.
Right.
To shorthand it.
Okay.
So we eat eggs and beef and pork and chicken and fish, wild caught fish. I mean, the quality of the food becomes what's important, not the quantity. We don't count things. We don't count macros. We don't count carbs. We don't count calories. We don't count any of that stuff.
Yeah.
We eat really good food, and I'm a good cook, and we eat well, and people come to dinner who don't know we're food weirdos, and they still don't know, because, if you're eating awesome wild-caught Alaskan king salmon or beautiful grass-fed ribeye and gorgeous vegetables, you don't feel deprived.
Nobody's saying, well, they're on this weird diet.
Where's the rice?
Yeah, right.
Where's the, so.
Do you eat like sweet potatoes or anything like that?
I do.
Yeah.
But not a whole bunch.
Right. I do like sweet potatoes. I don't have them that, it's not like I have to have them, but I do like them, a few times a week. That's good.
You can do that. But see, I really know a lot now about the benefits of being in a ketogenic state. So I tend to make choices that enable me to stay there. And fortunately, I get there and stay there really easily. Every time I test my blood, I'm just blown away. My ketone levels run really high. So I'm clearly suited for it.
So before I get to my questions that I ask all my guests, I just wanted to make one point that you had made, and you had written this whole article that you sent to me, and that's how we started this whole interview idea. But most, people might go to their doctor about something like you did. And you have good doctors, very good doctors. But doctors don't always, most doctors don't know about nutrition and diet. So they're going to prescribe a drug because that's something they do know. And so don't always just, just don't always go like, well, I went to the doctor and he said that I need to take this drug. That shouldn't stop people from exploring on their own. Like you said, take it into your own hands, do some research, take the drug, try it out, experiment with yourself, right? But it is kind of the main point I want to make is that doctors don't really always they don't learn about nutrition, right?
I understand that is starting to change, which is great. But for almost the past 100 years, since the Rockefeller report that basically designed medical education in this country, doctors have not learned much about nutrition. And I've heard countless physicians say that.
The physicians say it, yes.
Oh, absolutely. And my own doctor confessed it to me when he said, Naomi, we don't think about helping people by suggesting they change what they eat because we don't know anything about that. Direct quote from my internist when I told him how I'd cured myself. And physicians who have become public intellectuals in this space, like Peter Attia, whose work I cannot recommend enough. He and his colleagues, they all say it. They don't learn about nutrition in medical school. And the other thing that you've alluded to that we don't have time to explore, but is important to understand the inherent limitations of conventional medicine based on the difference between acute and chronic problems.
Right.
And the point is these chronic illnesses, obesity, diabetes, autoimmunity, cancer, these mystery pains, fibromyalgia, these are increasingly being understood as lifestyle diseases, diseases of civilization, diseases of environmental mismatch. And that concept's at the core of the ancestral health approach. Environmental mismatch. So you cannot take a drug. You can't fix a dietary disease like diabetes with a drug.
You're just going to cover up symptoms.
You may lower the blood sugar for a while, but it's going to keep rising because the body's insensitive to insulin because it's been bombarded with insulin for decades from carbohydrate excess. It's a disease of insulin intolerance. And what do? They give you more insulin. So, to try to keep you alive, but it doesn't fix the problem. You can fix the problem by not eating that stuff. And Virta Health, whose peer-reviewed, published results, 2 years worth now, putting type 2 diabetes into remission for hundreds of people.
That's great.
Is the proof in the pudding. So these conventional medicine will get there, but they're not yet.
And they're starting to with functional medicine. Now, the Functional Medicine Institute or Institute of Functional Medicine.
Right. Institute for Functional Medicine is training physicians and other healthcare providers after their education.
After they're educated. They're already doctors. I know I had my friend, Dr. Sandeep Kapoor, he's been on a couple times, talking about he's going to these getting recertified in these different modalities.
Correct.
And looking at people holistically. And it's a different approach than what they were taught.
And less people listen to this and think, well, that sounds a little sketchy,
Right.
Mark Hyman, who is the current president of the Institute for Functional Medicine, is also the head of the functional medicine department at the Cleveland Clinic.
Wow.
You don't get much more mainstream than the Cleveland Clinic.
Yeah, that's
true. He met the then head of the Cleveland Clinic and was talking to him about this approach, the systems biology approach that was developed by Jeffrey Bland, and what they were doing and what successes they were having. The man, to his credit, was intrigued and said basically, okay, come on down. And Hyman set up the functional medicine department at Cleveland Clinic.
That's wonderful.
They've got patients waiting for months because the word is out that they get results and people want to go there.
I love to hear this.
And doctors want to work there. They're lined up too, because think about how depressing it is to be a doctor, unable to help people.
Yeah.
They're burning out.
Yeah.
Because this is what they're seeing. They're seeing rising blood sugar, rising cholesterol,
insulin resistance.
Yes, these problems that you cannot fix with drugs.
No.
And it's heartbreaking. So the functional medicine docs are having the success of helping people get well. And I've heard so many of them say it's like a new lease on life. They fall in love with medicine again because
I love
that's why they got into it. They want to help people.
Well, we're going to put all of these different links to the different things that you have mentioned in this podcast. We're going to put those in the show notes so that everybody can kind of have a start. You've done all this research for years, so we have the benefit of having, the best of from Naomi Norwood.
But let me make a pitch also for conferences. I've become a bit of a conference junkie. And one of the things AHS does, the Ancestral Health Society, puts on an annual conference called the Ancestral Health Symposium.
Okay.
And this year it's going to be at UC San Diego in August. So there's information on our website. It is just the coolest thing to be there with hundreds of other people who are intrigued and curious and open-minded and interested in helping one another. They share their stories and their successes, and the talks are amazing.
I love it.
And they're all available online for free.
That's so
when
great.
I was taking care of my own, getting charge of my own health, I learned a ton from listening to AHS talks. They're all on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and we've had over 2.5 million views of AHS talks.
Well, it has to be they're free. 10 times that.
They're free and available to the world. So
we will put those links in there. That's wonderful. So, this is such an interesting topic, and we can go on for a long time. But what I do want to ask you the questions that I ask all my guests on my podcast. So, besides eating this way, what are some other things that you do to stay of sound mind and body in your day-to-day life?
Well, in addition to eating properly, I sleep long and well, which is heaven after decades of being sleep deprived. So there's a whole bunch of stuff on optimal sleep hygiene. I had deranged, messed up sleep, and that is not good. So, I'm just so much happier and more resilient and my best self when I get enough sleep. And I now routinely get great sleep. So,
and what is enough sleep? 7 to 9 hours?
For me, actually, it's closer to 9.
Wow.
I just sleep until I wake up. Yeah. And I have an Oura ring, so I know what's going on with my sleep. I know how much deep sleep I've gotten. I know where my heart rate variability is. I'm able to monitor it. Oh, I'll show you on my phone.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Well, we'll have to put a link to that too.
So I also manage stress. I certainly have less of it now than when I was a litigator.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd known these things decades ago. But, I still have stresses in my life. And I make sure I don't let myself get all agitated.
You don't let it affect you physically.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. You've got to be aware of it. And however that is, I mean, it's walking and lots of things I do to manage stress, but we'll just leave it at that title. So food, sleep, stress, and finally, the topic near and dear to your heart, movement. I now move, again, more closely aligned to what my body needs. So we walk every day, but most importantly, I lift heavy things very slowly to the point of muscle fatigue. And I do that once a week. And
I love it.
It is fantastic. And it's so important. I mean, obviously, it's cool to have nice biceps. And
you look awesome.
Thank
by
you.
The way, you look like.
But I'm strong. I mean, I bring home pots to put on my deck, and I can carry heavy things down to the deck. And you'd be amazed at how many women my age can't even get down on the floor to play with a kid and then pick themselves up again. But also, if you understand how important it is to keep your lean body mass, it's probably the most important thing for health as we age. If you look at the data, is lean body mass.
I agree.
It's essential. And then it has all these other effects of AMP kinase regulation. I mean, cancer avoidance. If you're interested in extending your health span, build your muscles.
Yes. Naomi, you got it. You're going to be our spokesperson. Okay. And all right. What's a favorite sound?
Laughter.
Oh, laughter. That's what our last guest said too. I love laughter.
No. Is that right?
She did. Your new best friend.
Absolutely. Especially the people I love. I mean, to hear my 92-year-old mom laughing, my daughter, my husband. I mean, and you know what's a close second? Happy kids playing. There must be a school near here because when I arrived,
there is.
I heard happy kids playing. I thought, that's great too.
That's a great sound.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's a favorite memory?
I want to thank you for this impossible task because I have spent the past week thinking of all these wonderful memories.
Oh, how wonderful. That was my point in asking these questions.
Is that
to
right?
Get people in their own lives thinking about and remembering all these good things.
Because I can get focused on loss because there have been a lot of them in the past decades. Decade, I meant to say. Lost a lot of intimates to cancer. Lost my dad, my little brother. Just so it's so important, and it was so valuable to have the nudge to remember how fabulous my life has been. And so just cataloging those memories. And I also noticed some patterns, which is instructive because it will guide my future choices. Because so many of these memories were hikes, were amazing times in nature. I realized that feeds my soul. I've got to, hikes in Greece and in France and mostly in New Zealand. Oh my goodness. And also musical performances that just, an amazing Greek woman we saw in Miami, and
a real life experience.
Yeah, the classical guitarist in the chapel in Barcelona, and so I clearly need to orchestrate more hiking and more musical performances. But if you make me pick one, it just happens to be a recent one, which so it will change too. But right now, what I think of is on January 13, I had the privilege of being on a little boat in Miami and witnessing my daughter's love ask her to marry him in the presence of all four of their parents. His mom had come from Germany for his PhD defense, which is why we were there. So all four parents and my mom, my daughter's grandmother, and their dear friends. And we got to be there. He was so generous to share that.
Sweet.
Yeah. And it was, I think of that now and I am just like grinning ear to ear. It was so fabulous. That must
make you so happy.
Yeah, I'm happy for her.
Oh, I love that. What a wonderful memory.
And for us.
Yes.
Good
luck to the happy couple. That's
Thank
wonderful.
You.
Okay, so what is a favorite place? Obviously, maybe hiking.
Yeah, it's my hood. I live in Topanga Canyon.
Yeah.
We are 1 block from the Topanga State Park.
Oh, nice.
Thousands of acres of urban wilderness. I walk there every day.
I love it.
We watch the trees. We watch it. Watch it as the seasons. We do have seasons in Southern California.
We actually do.
Yeah, and it's green right now and gorgeous. And
Ooh.
yeah,
I live very close to there, so I know what you're talking about.
it's lovely.
Okay, final question. What's the most woo-woo thing you've ever done?
So I thought a lot about this, and I have a slightly different answer because it was an effect that would certainly qualify for a lot of people as pretty out there.
Okay.
But it came from not such a woo-woo thing. I mean, I've done drum circles and all kinds of stuff, but
Yeah.
and as you may have gathered, I mean, I'm a pretty rational person. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of woo in my life.
No, yeah, you're logical.
Yeah. But in the 70s, when Dawn and I were first trained in transcendental meditation,
Ah, okay.
there was a day when our teacher and his wife were at our home in Santa Barbara, and the 4 of us were meditating together. I was a pretty new meditator at the time, but for some reason that day, I remember dropping pretty quickly, calming the monkey mind and dropping pretty quickly into this marvelous stillness. And at some point, I realized that I was floating up above myself.
You're kidding.
Looking down at myself and everybody else in the room. And I wasn't frightened. I wasn't shocked. It didn't drop me out of my state. I remember being kind of, that's interesting. And what a lovely, peaceful scene this is. And just felt, lots of loving, nice things that here we were and everything was so nice. And now I am not saying to your listeners that I was defying gravity and levitating off my chair, but that was my sensation. That was my perception of this event. And subsequently, I've had some other very interesting things happen while meditating in groups.
Oh, interesting.
There was a group that started in about 12 in the canyon, and it was different. It was mindfulness meditation. The man was a Buddhist, very experienced meditator. So that was a little challenging for me to lose the device of the mantra and focus on my breath, and different method, but very interesting. And again, there were occasions with a group of like over 10 where very interesting things happened. So there's something quite magical when a whole bunch of brains are in that state, in the same place, and it's way beyond my ken. But, as I've matured, I've realized I don't have to negate things I don't understand.
Right.
I open my heart to them, and I'm okay with the uncertainty, which is a very different place from how I spent most of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It's freedom.
Yes.
It's freedom, but those sound beautiful. I'm going to have to find out about that meditation group.
Find a group and see what happens. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, Naomi, it's been so interesting to sit down and talk to you. And we've had many conversations in the past, but, we could have many more. But this is, thank you for coming to the studio and for sharing all of your great information, and especially in all the links. So I highly advise everybody to go check out the Ancestral Health Society, and then maybe the Symposium. We'll have all that information in the show notes for everybody to peruse. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us so we can all make our lives better.
Thank you, Sheila.
Well, that's it for this episode. Have you ever tried paleo diet, a keto diet, anything like that? And what was your experience? I would love to hear from you. Send me an email or voice memo to soundmindbodypodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. And please subscribe to the podcast. You can do that on our website under the subscribe tab. Just select your favorite listening platform and subscribe. And while you're at it, maybe you could give us a review on iTunes. That really helps new listeners find us. Thank you to our producer, Tim Edwards, and the Inbound Podcasting Network. And thank you to our guest, Naomi Norwood. Get in touch and join the conversation. We're on Instagram at Sound Mind Body Podcast, or find us on Facebook, YouTube, or the web. Search for Sound Mind Body Podcast. I'm Sheila Melody. Join us next week as we explore, enlighten, and evolve.